Give yourself permission to feel the joy and follow your heart's desire. I know that your heart's desire is not a conference call. I know it's yours and yours alone. And it's up to you to say yes. And it's up to you to release the beliefs, ideas, and emotions that aren't serving you anymore. And so if you're still listening to me, probably perfectionism isn't serving you anymore. I'm on earth to remind you that you're beautiful, you're amazing, and you're fully equipped to do everything you're meant to do. It's up to you to say yes to freeing yourself from the old trances. And perfectionism, that's toxic, is an old trance. It's not something to brag about. Break free from perfectionism, a gifted adult's journey to wholeness. Hi, friends, it's Dianne here at Someone Gets Me. And today our topic is perfectionism and our journey to becoming more and more human and more whole in our experience. Now, I come by this topic rightly because I had a real issue with perfectionism, particularly in high school. And I remember looking back on the pressure that I had on myself and how was I going to make it? It was a really difficult time. And I think a lot of people go through that. And I think people go through it also in college. I work with some university professors, and I'm on the board of the University of Florida Psychology Department. And we see this a lot, where there's perfectionism in gifted people, and we tend to forget that we're human, we're not machines. So I'd like to talk about this for a little while, and some of it might be intense, and some of it hopefully will give you some hope and help you see that perfectionism, first of all, is not the enemy. It comes into us from the way we're treated and the way we assimilate the world. And so because of that, we have ability to make changes based on that information. So there's always going to be hope and joy at the end. But let's think about it. There's an early price that we pay for perfectionism as gifted people. Often we are praised from the time we can ever remember for something. We're really smart, or we're really creative, or we're ahead in our reading or ahead in our math. And I'm in second grade, but I'm already reading on a college level. All of those things are good. And it's how they're interpreted to the child and how the child assimilates them that can create a sense of perfectionism. Then what happens is that really good, amazing thing becomes, might we say, a nemesis, an issue, thorn in somebody's side, something like that. And we don't want that to happen, because what it does is it creates this self-evaluation, often critical loop of thinking and behaving that can become an addictive pattern. Because once the pattern starts in the brain and starts in the body and starts in the neurology, it will keep feeding itself. I mean, addiction is extremely powerful. I'm an expert in it. And one of the things I know is it's just not outside chemicals we get addicted to. We can be addicted to a pattern or an idea or a way of being. And so I think it's so important for us to realize that we can be stuck in a pattern of this self-critical, self-analyzing, self-evaluation loop of thinking and emotion that can keep us stuck in a perfectionistic loop that will then add to depression and anxiety, imposter syndrome, and all kinds of other cascading challenges. Sometimes perfectionism comes when you've been raised where it's been chaotic or maybe even traumatic, or maybe you've been made fun of for being smart. It can come from those kinds of things too. So the self-evaluation loop really gets it going. So what I want us to grow toward is more of a healthy striving versus this toxic perfectionism. I hear some people brag about being perfectionistic. I hear some people lament over it. I think it has a double-edged sword. I do know that gifted people tend to want to be correct, not correct as in right fighting or imperfectionistic, but things matter, that they're called the right thing. You'll hear a gifted person sometimes, and you probably do this, where you have to think about the word you're going to say so that you make sure that the word that you're saying matches the feeling or idea. Not because you don't know any words, but because we want to have a precise connection. So precision, or being correct, is important to gifted people naturally because of our neurology, because of the way our brain develops. So it's easy to get caught up in these self-evaluation loops and these perfectionistic cycles, when really what we want to be doing instead is going, okay, let me just relax here and see how I prefer to have things go. where I don't have to have expectations laid on me all the time or me to pick them up from others, right? And create a big mess because there's a lot of cost to it. One big cost is that I see a lot is analysis paralysis. Is we think so much that we don't have any emotional awareness. Maybe our spiritual self is disconnected, or maybe we don't even have a whole lot of friends because we're always in our head. And I lovingly tell people, you're not a brain on a stick. But I mean that. You're not a brain on a stick. And so many people are so over reinforced for their intellect that they miss who they are, all the beauty of their soul and their emotion and their physical body and the other things about them other than just their intellect. So analysis paralysis can create a big mess because it basically can stop a gifted person in their tracks because they'll be thinking so much they won't be able to move. And it's a real issue. They're not making it up. So if you know somebody who's gifted and they keep overthinking all the time and they can't get motivated, it's a real issue. Have them call me. I'll help them out. Somebody's got to help because it's a stuck loop that keeps happening until we do something to interrupt the loop. Then there's, of course, the thing that I really have to watch out for myself personally is emotional exhaustion. Because if I'm trying to have things work out, be correct, whatever it is, and that self-evaluation loop is happening, then it's really easy to be exhausted by monitoring everything and taking care of everything and making sure things are running smoothly. It's not easy to be a business owner and an author and an intuitive mentor and everything else that I do, coaching, sailing, and coaching different things. So there's a lot happening. And so it's really easy with those of us who are multi-potentialites that have a lot of things going on to get stuck in emotional exhaustion. There are some days I just want to rest and turn off my brain like the old tilt machine, on those pinball machines when I was a kid. And sometimes I do that, take that day or maybe 2 days and just rest. The other big price I think we pay when we get too perfectionistic is not having enough joy. For me, joy is our natural state. And if I'm not feeling joyful and I'm not feeling uplifted and inspired by life, I really want to look at where am I being perfectionistic? Where am I throwing an expectation into the world that maybe doesn't belong there? Because expectations lead to this kind of exhaustion. They lead to a form of perfectionism that allows us to stay stuck. Personally, I'd rather be growing, even if it's a little tricky or a little hard, than being stuck. Then it also causes relationship problems, being perfectionistic. I have a friend of mine who's very perfectionistic, and he, bless his heart, I think drives his poor wife crazy because he wants everything in a certain place. My dad was like that. Everything had to be in a certain place. And when my brother and I were little, I just now remembered this. We used to go in on his dresser. We would flip all the coins over. Like if you put them all heads up, we would put them all tails up. We would just mess it up just a little bit. And it would really bother him that it wasn't in order. And so it can create relationship problems if you're stuck in that constant expectation loop and that self-evaluation. When you're stuck in that spot, it's not pretty for you or anyone. So it's important that we find a way out and break free of the perfectionistic cycle so that we can keep going toward more and more wholeness. Because see, you're born whole. The lack of perception of being whole is all the stuff that we've picked up along the way. Belief systems, ideas, assessments we've made of the world, right, correct or incorrect, or if they even apply now, right? Like there's all these different things that happen. So our journey as adults, and especially as gifted adults who are neurodivergent, is to say, hold on a second, my core is joy and it's whole. So any belief or understanding I have of something other than that is acquired either from a lie I tell myself or an idea that popped in my head and I made it true. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Maybe somebody said it to me and I took it to be, truth. I don't know. But we are meant to be whole and joyful. So the way we break out of this trap that keeps us that step away from feeling our beautiful lives is to remember a few things. And the first thing I did, this is kind of how I did it. Okay. There's lots of ways, but one of the ways that I did it is I redefined the word failure or not being good enough. Because as an oldest child and the one who was overly praised for all these things, I always thought I had to measure up. But what I realized was I was measuring up to a fantasy. I was measuring up to something that wasn't true or real. And so I had to redefine what the word failure meant. I had to redefine the whole concept and the belief around that word and around what would happen. I remember when I was in college, I would think, oh my God, if I got a B on a test, that meant I was a failure and I was going to, and in about 5 seconds, I would have myself homeless on the street when none of that was going to happen. And I wasn't going to fail the class, but I was so afraid of it that I would tell myself these horror stories. So we want to redefine failure. So today, my definition of failure is that I've learned something. If I'm looking at something and it doesn't go the way I wanted to, I go, well, what did I learn here? Maybe in a relationship that I'm having, that I'm trying to communicate a need or communicate something, and there's a mismatch, then, and I feel like a failure that I didn't get my point across. Well, maybe I could say, what can I learn? Maybe I need to learn a different syntax, or check how I check in on my audience, or whatever it is. Or maybe just even ask the other person if they even heard what I said. I had that happen with a friend of mine driving in the car. She asked me a question, I was answering it, and I got this sense that she wasn't listening to the answer of the question she asked me. I finally stopped right in the middle of a sentence. I said, are you listening to what I'm saying? And she goes, well, actually, no, I'm not. I'm distracted. So paying attention to those things. And then I said, okay, well, when you're ready to hear the answer, if you want to hear the answer, let me know. I don't want to talk to nothing. And if you're distracted, go on your little cool little distraction. She was daydreaming a little, and it was a relaxing day. No pressure. Don't try to force things, right? Allow yourself to see that sometimes the failure, the perception of something not working out, is just as much about the other or the circumstance or the situation as it is us. So let us break ourselves free of this. Oh my God, I messed it up. I'm horrible. You're not horrible. You're not stupid. All those things are not true. The other thing that I think is important is to give ourselves permission to embrace being human. Like, we're not machines. And I think sometimes we think we're machines, or I think sometimes because we can do so much so fast, or we have such an amazing awareness and processing, that we think we should do much more faster than everyone else. Well, maybe in some situations, but that doesn't make us a machine. We're still human. We still have feelings and needs and desires. We're still the mammals that require in-person connection to others of the same species. These things are important. I think the biggest lesson is to embrace being a human being. We're not human doings. Embrace it. I know I didn't for a long time, because I'm kind of short, and people made fun of me. And when I was in high school, I got made fun of and bullied a lot for being short and for being a blonde. I really paid a big price for that. And it really harmed me. I had to do a lot of healing about the bullying I experienced for my intellect and for my size. And so we all go through difficult times, but so we have to give ourselves permission to be ourselves and to break free of the idea that there is a perfect. You are perfect, whole, and complete, and we're all perfect, whole, and complete, just as we are. And we might look different, and we might act different, and we have different gifts. But the truth is that you are amazing, just like you are. It's true. So the way we break free of perfectionism is to kind of slow down, back up the bus a little bit, if you will, and say, well, hold on a minute here. We don't even expect machines to be perfect. There's always a degree of variance. I remember my first book was published, and it has a jacket sleeves on the hardcovers, and a couple of them were out of alignment. And I called and said, these are out of alignment. And they go, well, there's a certain variance. The machine's not going to do it perfectly. Well, we ought to give ourselves that lesson, that there's a certain variance, and machine's not going to do it perfectly, because we're not even machines. And when we let our joy show up, and we change our expectations to preferences, and we allow ourselves a different way to see the world, where we can strive to do really great things, because we will be doing them, and we are doing them. But we don't have to have this toxic, pressure, negative, judgmental type of attitude. We can release that. That comes from fear. That comes from old pain that we're rehearsing in our body. What it's doing is it's making our inner cellular system a poisonous waste dump. And I don't know about you, but once I realized the toxicity and the damage to my cells and my neurons from holding on to toxic emotions and toxic beliefs like perfectionism, that's toxic, I started healing real fast and started working on myself real fast because I don't want to live in a toxic waste dump. I don't. So what are you going to do to free yourself from that trance? How are you going to break yourself free? Because being a perfectionist in the sense of the word that you're holding on to a certain way to do it and it has to be that way or no way is not noble. It's actually quite limited and it's actually underwhelming in behavior. What's more important is being willing to grow and change and be curious and maybe even entertain ideas that are completely different than yours. And then still say, do I retain my same value? Do I retain my same understanding? And allow ourselves to step out of our comfort zone and in our comfort zone and see that the world is constantly moving. And that when we allow ourselves to be in that fluid space, we can be correct, we can serve others, we can feel really good and be free of the toxicity that some types of perfectionism get us in trouble for. I don't know. I hope that all made sense. So the whole moral of the story here is embrace being a human being. You are a human being. You're not a human doing. Give yourself permission to feel the joy and follow your heart's desire. Because here's what I know. I know that your heart's desire is not a conference call. I know it's yours and yours alone. And it's up to you to say yes. And it's up to you to release the beliefs, ideas, and emotions that aren't serving you anymore. And so if you're still listening to me, probably perfectionism isn't serving you anymore. And always you can do a get to know you call with me, email me. You can find me so many different ways in order for me to support you in any way I can, because that's what I'm on earth to do. I'm on earth to remind you that you're beautiful, you're amazing, and you're fully equipped to do everything you're meant to do. It's up to you to say yes to freeing yourself from the old trances. And perfectionism, that's toxic, is an old trance. It's not something to brag about. I hope this episode has served you, friends. And until the next episode of Someone Gets Me, put your face to the sun so the shadows fall behind you, because you are a rock star. You're here on purpose with a mighty purpose. So go out there and let your light shine. And remember, joy is your natural state. Until the next episode of Someone Gets Me, this is Dianne saying, be well.